You carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Drone bombs on the Rio Grande, bounties posted on American Border Patrol agents, a fuel smuggling empire washing billions through American banks. The cartels on our southern border aren't smugglers anymore. They're a military with a business plan, and their product lines run north up against the interstates into your county on a schedule. Tonight we map the machine, test whether it's already operating where you live, and get answers from a man who worked that border for a career. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News for Friday, July 17th, 2026. I'm Chris Heaven, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined by 26-year CIA case officer Jeff MD, 24-year CBP Special Agent JJ Carroll, and our good friend Agent 00711 Khalid Muhammad from Command 11 Intelligence. Bottom line up front, the cartels answered a locked border by becoming a war machine. Drone bombs, bounties on federal agents, and a fuel empire flagged at $7 billion in American banks. Bottom line, its products ride the highways into your county, and tonight is about seeing it early. So going directly into segment number one, the machine, drones, bounties, and a fuel empire. Sinaloa scouts arrested near Presidio were supporting drone operations carrying explosives, and CJNG authorized a tiered bounty system on Border Patrol agents. That's insurgency, not smuggling. The crossings collapsed and the cartels didn't. They diversified. Stolen fuel is now their second biggest business, with a third of Mexico's fuel illicit and billions flagged in American banks. Every line of that business needs American infrastructure to run. Your banks, your highways, your rental market, which means the machine was never staying south of the river. So going directly to Encyclopedia MD right off the bat, Jeff, you're in a border state. Yep. Drone bombs, bounties on federal agents. When did the cartel stop being smugglers and essentially becoming a military adversary?
The whole they're still smugglers. Don't get it wrong. They've began seriously diversifying their revenue streams probably 20 years ago when I was working the border, which was back in the early 2010 area, mid 2010s. They were already well into the fuel smuggling. What they would do is they would steal gasoline from Pemex, which is the state petroleum company, and they've got a monopoly. They would steal fuel from Pemex, and then they would just turn around and sell it to somebody else at a discount. So, gas stations and all these would buy it because, the cartel's paying nothing for it. So they sell it for, $1 a gallon. That's $1 a gallon more than they had at the beginning of the day. But they'd also diversified into other things, some of which didn't even impact us. One of the things they made a lot of money on down there was car registrations. In Mexico, there's this real kind of a convoluted process in how you get a car registered and all this kind of thing. And they got into that. So they got a cut in a lot of areas of every car registration. You don't think, okay, big deal. Maybe they get $50, but there's millions of cars. And so, they're getting tens of millions of dollars off of that, just that alone. Then when Biden came in and opened up the borders, JJ can attest, the human smuggling thing, which had always been there, just went full bore crazy. And, they've always made money on smuggling people. Those are the coyotes, and coyotes cannot operate in cartel cartel territory without paying off the cartel. There's a business fee in effect. You're going to use our turf, you're going to use our smuggling routes, you're going to pay us for that. And then eventually the cartels just said, why are we selling our services to these people? Why don't we just take it over? And so then they got into the smuggling business, and they're in the anything they can make money at business. If a terrorist says smuggle our people across, sure, okay, how much?
That was a very comprehensive answer. I would expect no less from.
In other words, long-winded.
No, it was a great answer, and it opens the door to a number of conversations with JJ. First and foremost, JJ, I want to hear your experiences on the fuel side, and then I want to ask you as well, during your entire career spent on the border, what did you see that Americans still refuse to believe? So fuel first, and then what are people refusing to believe that you saw happen over and over?
Well, I believe what Jeff is saying is that they diversified, and why didn't they? Because it's a narco state down there. If you think Gloria Steinbaum is running the country, you're a fool. She's taking direct orders from the cartels. The cartels run their government, which infuriates me when you think about we're in Iran, we're in the Middle East, 7,000 miles away, fighting the boogeyman, and the people that are killing us are right across the border. It's not like Juarez and Tijuana. I got to take an airplane. It's going to take me 30, 36, 40 hours to get there. I literally walk across the border and it's there. So when you're talking about the cartels, I think the diversification, stealing, like Jeff said, car registration, they're the mob, right? They run everything. They own everything. And I think the thing that Americans refuse to accept is the drug cartels are here in America. They're no longer the boogeyman deep inside in Colombia, Cartagena, down in Sinaloa. No. They're all over America now because they came over during Joe Biden. They were able to set up their apparatus for the distribution arm of their business, where they used to subcontract that out to the American gangs and criminal cartels. They were able to bring their whole apparatus into America, and they set up shop, and they're inside of our country right now.
Well, that's a great lead-in for Khalid, which, by the way, I'm expecting the next hour or so to be an epic battle for Ray of Sunshine today between the two of you. Jeff, he's tied a couple times for Ray of Sunshine, but JJ and Khalid, that's a whole other level, right?
Well, Khalid's got that black background. He already looks like a bad dude. So let's just go ahead and give it to him right now.
Well, no, we can't do that. We can't jump the shark on this or anything. But if he starts doing this when he talks,
then it's over.
With these guys on the show, I'm the Washington Generals, and they're the Harlem Globetrotters.
Right. So first and foremost, Khalid, I want you to speak about the cartels being set up across the United States. And after that, I'll hit you with a second question.
Well, the cartels were facilitated to move across into the U.S. When you looked at the drug trade, when you looked at human trafficking. It's like JJ said, these are narco corporations. They're not just states anymore. They're full corporations that are diversified. They have numerous lines of revenue, and because of that, they've set up their operations in that way. I think it was last year sometime that we showed a map of the U.S. where all the Mexican cartels had operations. The entire Northeast, the entire Midwest, the Southeast, most of the Southwest. You had narco traffickers, narco smugglers, narco corporations that were all operating there. You had a huge advantage given to them when all of them went to Venezuela and got trained on drone warfare. And when you train the narco terrorists on drone warfare, you've expanded their capabilities of being able to fight against both Border Patrol, the U.S. military, law enforcement, and to be able to deliver product without ever crossing the border. The problem we have right now is that it's like JJ said, people are still thinking, well, the narco terrorism, the narco industry is still in Mexico. It is throughout the U.S. And until you recognize that fact, you're not going to fix it. And I agree with JJ. We're so worried about fighting with Iran and fighting with countries that are 7,000, 6,000, 8,000 miles away. And we're not worried about what's happening on the border with the US. And you've got China operating inside those cartels, whether people want to accept that or not.
I've got another question for you, Khalid, but it is a quick notification here. JJ, you're going to have to step it up a bit. Khalid has now taken the lead for Ray of Sunshine on this episode. So, Khalid, if you were a cartel boss watching Washington fight Iran this week, what's going through your mind? What are you thinking?
I'm spreading my rat lines. I am openly spreading my rat lines. The U.S. intelligence, U.S. military, U.S. administration's total focus is on the Middle East right now. Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Saudi, Jordan, Kuwait. That's where the U.S. focus is right now. The entire homeland is open to me. That's why Iran just pumped $3 billion into the cartels, because they said, look, all their attention is here. Let's take advantage of it there, and let's expand our rat lines. You're moving weapons, you're moving drugs, you're moving people, you're moving fighters, you're moving terrorists. You're coordinating with the camps that are sitting on the northern border in Canada, where we've talked about this numerous times. There's at least 6 ISIS camps and major ISIS camps on the northern border of the U.S. where people are moving into the U.S. and no one's paying any attention to them. So if I'm a cartel boss, I'm going, I've got a lull. Everyone is looking someplace else. Now is the time where I spread, while I move, while I fill the gaps that I'm going to need over the next 3 to 6 months to wage war inside the United States.
Commanding lead for Khalid for Ray of Sunshine at this stage of the podcast. Jeff, I want to come back to what you started with on the fuel. How does stolen gasoline become like the cartel's second biggest business in, let's say, 18 months or so?
Well, they put money into it, but they don't have to put a lot of money into it. You steal a truck full of gasoline. Okay. And then you sell the gasoline, you keep the truck and use it to steal more gasoline somewhere else. And what they use when they're stealing gasoline, it's one thing, you steal a truck full of gas that's come from the refinery or the distribution center or whatever, the bulk plant or whatever. That's one thing. But they have another option. Once they have a stolen truck, they can go to anywhere you have natural gas. And Mexico has a lot of natural gas. You have condensate collection points. Natural gas is primarily methane, but it's also got butane, propane, all the other anes as well, but at a lesser degree. And the larger molecule stuff, the pentanes, hexanes, heptanes, octanes are there, but you don't want them in your gas because then it's wet gas. You want dry gas. So what they do is they have these collectors where it's called condensate. They condensate and drop down because gasoline, octane and these kind of things, gasoline at normal temperatures is a liquid. So you give it a place to to condense out. And then in the old days here, they actually dump it on the ground because they had no market for it. There were no cars yet. Well, down there, they store it in a tank. And then they take it off to a refinery to blend with gasoline. It is pure gasoline. You can put that stuff right in your car and drive on it. So you get a tanker truck, you drive out there, you bust the lock, and you load down all that big tank of condensate. You just put it in your tanker truck and drive off, and you can go sell it to somebody. Because it's pure gasoline. Doesn't have any of the additives or anything else, but it's pure gasoline. And that is just printing money. Now, what they can also do, and people don't think about it, they can drive it north. Is it illegal to import gasoline into the United States? No, it's not. And we actually export gasoline into Mexico because they don't have the refining capacity that they should. So they give us oil and we give them gasoline and diesel. Well, if a tanker truck is coming up in California, Arizona, New Mexico, it's coming across the border and it's got the proper manifest saying, yeah, taxes have been paid. This is just gasoline going to, and then they can turn around and sell it to an American distributor to be blended with other gas and sold. It's a legal product. It's just like the cartels are into avocados in a big way, believe it or not. Avocados is a huge moneymaker for them. They've kind of taken over the avocado industry in Mexico. Avocados coming across the border, not illegal, profitable, but not illegal. Same thing with the gas.
Wow. Great explanation. I didn't know a lot of that stuff, especially how they're, putting it all together. JJ, of course, you weren't on with us last night, and Jeff was telling us how they've been getting some rain in Arizona, which they haven't got in a while. And I've been wondering what's going on, JJ, with Jeff kind of, shrinking in his little window here on the panel. Well, we found out yesterday. There it is. Jeff so wet he shrunk and turned into Dorf. You remember Tim Conway and Dorf? So yeah. there you go. Never a dull.
So that's okay.
Never a dull moment. Everybody's taking shots at everybody. It means you can feel the love all the way around, right? And that's the way it is. So, JJ, let me ask you. Khalid did a great job of explaining how the cartels have infested the United States, as well as sitting on our northern border in addition to our southern border. Then Jeff has done a great job of explaining the economics of some of these new things that they're doing to make a lot of money. From a CBP special agents perspective, how do we actually hurt these guys? Do we carry out strikes on the quote unquote kingpins? Do we put sanctions on the money? Do we try to seal the border? I mean, I thought the border was in pretty decent shape, but it's hard to do with legal products, like Jeff pointed out. Was a great point. But do we do one of those things, all of those things? How do we accomplish this? I
think we do all of those things, but I think we have to come to the realization that they are the enemy, that we are neighbors to a narco state. And if we're going to fall, I always like this, if you're going to be good or you're going to be bad in your decision making, be consistent. So if we're going to go bomb Iran and we're going to bomb all these Middle Eastern countries, why are we not bombing the crap out of Mexico? We know where all the plants are. We know where all the distribution lines are. Why are we not taking them down? I don't understand. It makes no sense to me. What are we going to do? We're going to go ask Gloria Steinbaum for her approval to go in there and knock the narco states down. You're telling me we don't have the manpower, we don't have the technology, we don't have the special forces. I mean, but if we're going to do that, then we have to be ready for the blowback. It's $1 trillion business. They're not going to just let it go. They're going to fight back. And they have a lot of the weaponry that we sent to Ukraine has circled back into the cartels. So, and I don't think that and I don't think, Chris, honestly, I know that we don't have the stomach for it. We don't have the will for it. They're not going to do it. Donald Trump, he campaigned on this. Where is it? Like everything else he campaigned on, what are we doing? We're dealing with Israel, and we're going to the wall and crying on the wall with our hat on, and we're bombing Middle Eastern countries. That's it. That's it. The border is secured, more secure than it's ever been, ever. But if you're going to have this war with the cartels, you better have your military on the southern border, like all of it, and the northern border. And then you better be ready to handle the repercussions of the narco terrorists that are already here in America. And I know that Donald Trump, his Department of Justice, and all the other squeamish people, they have no desire, no moral courage or desire to begin a war with the cartels.
Your lead has shrunk dramatically, Khalid. For a ray of sunshine, you're about right there.
Make your background darker, Khalid.
I'm going to throw this at you first, Khalid, but then I'm coming to you, Jeff and JJ. I want your feedback as well. So JJ said a mouthful there when he said, the border's the most secure it's been, in years. And then I think a lot of the public's perception is, well, isn't the threat shrinking because the border's more secure than it's been in a long, long time? How do you address that, Khalid? Like, what are your comments to anybody in the audience who thinks that because we've knocked down, let's say, this border tourism where they were marching tens of millions of people into our country, how do you reconcile with them that it's not as secure as they think?
Well, you have to remember, as a narco corporation, you're going to look for opportunities. when you know the Trump administration has sealed the border and they're making it difficult for you to cross, you're going to focus more on your legitimate products that you can flow into the U.S. without raising alarm or raising any more enforcement levels on the border. Then work on those things that you're going to cause problems for yourselves. Right now, if again, I'm going to go back to the question you asked before. If I was a cartel boss, I would be looking at how many legal products can I move into the United States to keep generating revenue for me. On my side of the border, I'm building up my military. I'm building up my fighters. I'm keeping my underground rat lines open where I'm moving drugs and human trafficking into the United States where it's undetectable. And I'm waiting for the opportunity when the focus shifts. When that focus shifts, the flood opens. And we've been saying this over and over that whether it be Kash Patel, whether it be Seb Gorka, whether it be John Radcliffe, whether it be the new ODNI, I think it's Jake Clayton, who's being going through the Senate confirmation right now. These are not people you want making these decisions or advising Donald Trump on how to make these decisions. You were elected on America first. Everything you're doing is the world's first and America later. When you first came into power, it was ICE, and you used ICE, and you carried out arrests, and you brought all these illegals in. And when you saw the negative blowback from the Democrats, you start going, well, maybe we should stop. Maybe we should roll back. That's when you put your foot on the gas and you go harder at that.
Yep.
That's when when you get a reaction from your enemy, that means you've got your foot on their neck and you're cutting off their breath. Donald Trump stepped back and said, "Whoa, wait a minute. No, we've got midterms coming up. I don't need to piss off a lot of people because it'll cost me the midterm elections." Is the security of the United States more important to you, or is midterm elections more important to you? And Donald Trump has got a very big problem right now in figuring out whether he's going to win the House and the Senate or he's going to protect the United States. And my fear right now is you've got both of your borders massing people up, and they're just waiting for that opportunity. And once the opportunity presents itself, look out, because then it's a flood, and that flood is going to be unstoppable.
Okay, so his lead's like this now, JJ. It's not insurmountable. I know you got what it takes to surpass him.
But I don't mean to interrupt, but he's absolutely right. You have Donald Trump is doing he's doing everything against America first. He's doing foreigners first. And every time that we get a foothold or maybe a little inch or two on this illegal immigration thing, he pulls back. A great case in point. I have my guys, the future of op teams are calling me and telling me, yeah, they're telling us we can't do vehicle stops anymore. We can't do vehicle stops anymore because Border Patrol and ICE agents shot and killed 2 people that tried to kill us, so that we need more training. I mean, it's an abomination what Trump is allowed to have happen. He's allowed Mark Mullen to be the director, the Secretary of DHS. Mark Mullen then in turn gets the director of ICE, is a retired Oklahoma Highway Patrol sergeant. Dear God, you can't make this crap up. I think it's intentional. I think the people that are put in positions of authority and power are incompetent, and they're chosen because they're incompetent in order to facilitate this. We're just allowing this to happen. And as we do nothing and take our foot off the gas, like Khalid said, they are going to put their foot on the gas, and they're going to drive us back, and they're going to make gains and more gains and more gains, because we as Americans do not have the stomach to do what needs to be done to save our republic. I believe that full-heartedly.
Neck and neck for Ray of Sunshine now.
Thank you.
I want to quickly say before Jeff weighs in on this, Mark Wayne Mullen is the guy who physically comforted Michael Byrd after he murdered Ashley Babbitt, and then repeatedly in public thanked Michael Byrd for saving his life. When I say it's all kabuki theater, here's a great example. They think that you are stupid. They think that Americans are stupid, and that you won't remember this Mark Wayne Mullen's disgusting behavior related to J6. The guy's a scumbag, absolute scumbag. Ashley Babbitt was murdered in cold blood, and for anybody to praise the murderer. That blows my mind. But they think that you've forgotten. They think that you won't remember what happened all those years ago. He's a bad, bad actor. So, Jeff, I'm going to let you close out segment one with your thoughts on, the general perception. Well, the border's more secure than it's been in years. Isn't the threat shrinking?
Well, it is more secure than it's been in years. It doesn't mean it's secure. It just means more secure, as opposed to it was this insecure. Now it's this insecure. We want it this insecure. Yeah. Are you getting, hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens crossing every day? No, we're not. Thank God. But if you think the cartels just give up, no, they don't. And the thing is, for a lot of times, that trafficking in humans, the reason they did it when they made money of it too is a great distraction to tie up Border Patrol resources so they could bring drugs across somewhere else. Well, they are very flexible. If you close them down somewhere else, they'll come in somewhere, on the other side. They'll have more tunnels in Tijuana and Nogales and, and down in Juarez or anywhere. They're really good at digging tunnels. They are not giving up. And just like drones allow you to put ordnance on the enemy without risking a soldier's life, drones allow you to drop drugs into America without needing a mule. They're using the same technology. They are not stupid. We use it to drop payloads of ordnance. They use it to drop payloads of fentanyl and cocaine. And they're small. They're damn near undetectable. They can put it out in the middle of the frickin' boondocks. And all you need is one dude in a pickup truck to be there when it drops the load. And then he picks it up, throws it in the back of his truck, and he's just another rancher driving into town. So no, it is secure in some ways. It is not secure in other ways.
So going into segment two, Khalid, JJ tied up for Ray of Sunshine for tonight. But Jeff, after that, he's right on their heels. So let's get into segment number two here. Is it in your county yet, meaning the cartels? The cartel machine isn't a border story. It's a logistics company, and its product lines are drugs, people, fuel, money. And it all rides the interstates north on schedule. Tonight's test, the arrest test, the fentanyl test, the highway test, the tells that the machine is operating in your county and not just on cable news. Your edge is the same as all week's baseline. The family that reads its own county's arrest and overdose patterns sees the spillover before the neighbors do. So with that being said, Khalid, I'm going to switch it up a little bit and come to you instead of Encyclopedia MD. The arrest test. So cartel-linked arrests and stash house bursts are showing up in a state's news, theoretically speaking, right? What does that actually tell you when you see arrests happening in your county?
Well, there's a couple of problems here. I mean, you cannot determine what the actual effectiveness of the arrest is until it's actually prosecuted. 99% of your arrests end up being in a plea bargain or in someone being deported, which means they come back across the border and they come back stronger. I'll give you another one. I think it was 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Department of Justice announced that they arrested 31 Indians that were running a fentanyl smuggling racket inside the U.S. from India. And everyone went, whoa, wait a minute. India's supposed to be our friend, and they're smuggling fentanyl into the U.S. as well. What you're finding is not only are the cartels diversifying, but they're finding new partners. And those new partners are going, well, for a buck, yeah, why not? We'll smuggle this in. No one's going to look at us. It's like the idea of a terrorist. If I've got an American passport and I've got a white man's name and I've got a white man's face, no one's going to look at me and think this is Al-Qaeda. It's the same thing when you're not Mexican. No one's going to think you're a fentanyl smuggler. You're part of a cartel. But an Indian coming into the country, carrying fentanyl, smuggling fentanyl, being a mule for smuggling, all of a sudden the game is changing. Again, it goes back to the narco corporations that have been made now. When you are running a corporation, you are looking at your lines of revenue. And how do you diversify those lines of revenue? And diversifying your lines of revenue means diversifying your delivery techniques. So I don't put a lot of weight on arrests, because the biggest arrest you should have been making was illegals and deportations. That's the biggest number we should have been looking at. And that number has gone by the wayside and nobody's talking about it anymore. Part of that was defunding the DHS and defunding ICE and saying, well, we're not going to give any money. And now finally ICE has gotten money. But you've got America playing like a juggler. They're throwing different balls in the air and keeping America going, let's keep you distracted. Let's keep you distracted. Let's keep you distracted. So no one knows what's actually affecting America. And that juggling act is going to end at some point. And when the balls drop, that's when Donald Trump is going to go, oh, now what answer do I give?
Mm-hmm. All right. So you got to step it up here, JJ. Let's talk about the fentanyl test. So what do overdose numbers in the county indicate as far as, say, cartel activity or distribution is in that county?
Well, I don't know if it's, the county will, the drugs are not coming to the border and just stopping there. And it's not going to just inner cities. There's not enough Black Latinos in the inner cities that are snorting and shooting cocaine and heroin and mixing it with fentanyl. It's going across America. This is a supply and demand issue. They're not digging tunnels. You know how much money it costs to dig a tunnel and put ventilation and electricity in and then bring it up knowing that you're only, think about this. You create a tunnel across from Mexico to America, maybe it's a mile, 2 miles long, with air conditioned ventilation, electricity, knowing that you are only going to have that for maybe a month or two, and then there's going to be discovered. Can you imagine how lucrative this business is, that you will create a tunnel and then within a week you will recoup all of your money 100 times? Well, that's how much narcotics is coming into America. So it's not just going to one city. Or if you're having drug overdose, well, then you have a drug distribution ring in your community, and they are now cutting it with fentanyl, and it's getting out in your community before it goes to the next destination. You're looking at Donald Trump. His last year was 50,000 overdose deaths, with about, I think it was 75-80% of it was fentanyl related. That's one Vietnam every single year in America. Joe Biden, we got almost to 3 times that. About 125 to 150,000 people were dying every year under Joe Biden's third or fourth year in office. This is an epidemic, and this goes full circle what we just talked about. Try to convince me that Iran government, how many people have been murdered in America by the Iranian government and their proxies. Go ahead, I'll wait. Now, I can show you in the last decade, over 1 million Americans died of fentanyl drugs that came directly from Mexico. And yet we do nothing. It's absurd.
Well, let's go there with Jeff first then. And Cleet, I want to hear your thoughts on that as well. As far as JJ's question, how many killed here in America? Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's absolutely right. We talk about, they talk about the opioid deaths. Okay, everybody made a big stink about the opioid deaths, and they should have. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people died from opioids, but that was a relatively tight time frame. Opioids didn't really become popular as a street drug, I think, in probably the late 2000s, early 2010s. The whole pill mill thing, and most of those opioids, the vast majority of them, came from the United States. And so the DEA was able to look at, okay, who's making the drugs, who's giving the prescriptions. I remember in Florida there were like 4 doctors who prescribed more opioid doses than the entire state of California. Okay, so yeah, it was relatively easy to find if you were actually looking for it. But fentanyl's everywhere, and fentanyl has taken over, and the DEA can't go back to the fentanyl factory and say, well, how many pills did you make last month, and who did you send them to, and what's the distribution, and then go to them and say, hey, how many fentanyl prescriptions did you give out? Because they don't do that. It's all illegal stuff. And more people are dying from fentanyl and they're dying from, than died from opioids. And the thing about fentanyl too is it's mixed with other drugs. And so you get some kid who's going to a rave who thinks he's taking ecstasy, but it's ecstasy laced with high dosage, fentanyl, and then they croak out and die because of that, and they OD. And that's everywhere all the frickin' time, and it's all over the country. Opioids, yeah, they were all over the countries, but there was a section of America that was more susceptible to it. Just like during the, when the crystal meth was a big deal, it was mostly Middle America and the South. It was almost regional. But fentanyl is coast to coast, border to border. It is everywhere. And they're not making fentanyl, at least not to my knowledge. There's not a big push for these gangs to make fentanyl in the United States. They make it somewhere that's safe, because a factory is a capital investment and you want to protect it. So you make it in Mexico or you make it in China, and then you distribute in the United States. And the Indian thing makes a lot of sense. Think about Indians in America. What's one of the primary industries they're in?
7-Eleven.
Trucking.
Yep.
Lots and lots of Indian truck drivers. So if you have an Indian drug distribution outfit, how better to distribute than you put it on a long haul truck that's going coast to coast? And maybe it's a legitimate truck. The driver is compromised. He's just picking up a load. But when they open it, put the drugs in, and they drive it across country, the company probably doesn't know anything about it. But if you're looking for drug traffickers, you're thinking Mexicans, Guatemalans. You're not thinking Indians.
We got home at 0300 from our cabin, and we saw multiple wrecks, of course, both directions. It's, somewhere on average 10, 12-hour drive. And we saw 3 wrecks between the trip there and the three back that were 100% Indians. No ifs, ands, or buts. Yeah. No right to be in America, no right to have a CDL. But Khalid, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Let me throw a couple things in here. Number one, fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. Number one. Number two, 80% of the fentanyl seized in America in 2025 by all the different law enforcement agencies was laced with xylazine. Xylazine is a horse tranquilizer. And when you ingest it, there's no bringing you back with Narcan or anything else. Narcan works on opiates and opiates only. And there's no way to reverse the effects of xylazine, because it basically tells your brain to shut down all of your critical functions. So, Khalid, if you're going to get the ray of sunshine 2 days in a row here, this is probably your best chance.
Well, let's also remember that fentanyl is a cutting agent as well for cocaine and for heroin. So when you add that into the mix, cocaine, your biggest distribution market is in the New York Stock Exchange. All of your stockbrokers, financial managers are all using coke. They have no issue getting it, using it. You swing over to Hollywood, you find the same thing there. So that's one distribution point you've got there. Then you've got fentanyl mixed in with other drugs, heroin that goes into your inner cities, Midwest, moves through the U.S. into different areas. Your problem right now is, while you're looking at China as being the biggest exporter of fentanyl, Greenland, Denmark, Norway, these are also major exporters. Ukraine is also exporting fentanyl into Mexico and moving it into the United States. Wherever they are able to find this chemical, they are moving it into Mexico and moving it through the U.S. Again, I come back to the same thing. When you look at terrorism in the U.S. as compared to cartel problems in the U.S., I wouldn't even be looking at terrorism in the United States. Your cartel problems are directly related to your illegal aliens, are directly related to your narco trafficking, are directly related to Mexico. And I go back to what JJ's saying. Why are you not bombing across the border into Juarez, into Tijuana? Why are you not hitting Mexico over and over and over and over and over again and going, we've had enough? Instead, you're worried about Iran. Iran is 7,000 miles away. I can't think of more. One Saudi ambassador has been killed by the Iranian IRGC in the United States in the last 10 years. I can't count any others. When you count the Afghani refugees that have come in, yeah, they've killed a lot more of their expat Afghanis who were collaborators with the US. But again, and this is another spin, you just had the deputy speaker of the Afghan National Assembly arrested in Somalia for running drugs into the United States. And he's being extradited into the US to be prosecuted. This is a country you're paying $40 million a week to for humanitarian aid, $40 million a week minimum for counterterrorism activities, and another $100 million a month from the CIA for intelligence sharing. That's what, $180 million that you're giving a country that's exporting drugs as a practice into the United States. Which enemy are you really fighting? You're enabling everybody.
It's actually higher than that. I did a deep dive on this about a week ago. And when you look at all of the, so-called NGOs, charitable organizations that are in Afghanistan, we are sending like just ginormous amounts of money to them as well, which in turn they operate underneath the Taliban, and they might as well just hand the money directly to the Taliban for all intents and purposes. JJ, let's talk the highway test. So you're on like maybe I-75 here on the East Coast, or maybe I-35 up the middle of the country. What's moving past people while they're driving on the interstate that they have no insight or visibility into?
Well, I used to do this when I would, when my last title was in an interior station in California. And we used to talk about this quite a bit. We would take down a drug load, we'd see it. And then we instinctively knew that there were other vehicles all around us that were loaded and they were already going by. And maybe this was a sacrificial lamb that came up for us to go in there and be completely consumed with as gigantic loads were going by. I think when you're on the interstate, and I do this now, I look around and I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea what's around me. I don't. Now, it used to be when you used to have truckers, you would give them wide berth and you would be very respectful. Now what I do is I drive by, I look up and to see what color they are. Are they Indians? Are they Indians? So did they get one of those no-name driver's license CDLs from New York City and California? And I give them wide berth. I don't get anywhere near them. And I think we are so lulled to sleep thinking that we're safe in America when we have so many different avenues of attack against us. We are the most vulnerable we've ever been. We've imported the enemy into our country. We've depleted the natural race of our people. It's like if I went to Pakistan and said, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to flood your nation with 50% white people. Don't worry about it. It's going to be the best white Christians we can find. They're never going to do that. They're never going to. Pakistan deported 2 million Afghanis of the, quote, same religion. Get the F out of my country. Because why? Because everybody wants their societal and cultural norms, their race of people to be that country. Because as demographics go, your nation goes. Look at America. I think this is a different, everything's connected, but I think by 2030, when the 2030 census comes out, I think Americans are going to be shocked. They're going to be so unbelievably shocked. They're going to find out that the white American is the minority in 2030. They're going to be shocked. We're going to go from 6 million Muslims to over 30 million Muslims. We're going to go from a Hispanic population about 22% to about 27%. We're going to have a hodgepodge of nationalities that are going to be even equal to or greater than the Hispanic population. The blacks are dying because they're killing each other and they're killing their babies. They're dying. White people are having babies at 1.5. 1.6 is death, meaning your race has died. It's not dying, it's dead. And it's going to take a religious miracle to get back up into the living. I think 2030 is going to be a shock to the American system. And you ask, what do you look at when you're driving down the road? What I look at, totality of America, is America has systematically changed overnight. Look, I did a demographic study. Do you know that up until 2010, America was a supermajority white nation of 75% of the population was white. 2010 is not 500 years ago. In 2010, it flipped. And why did it flip? Because of Obama, because of the Hart-Celler Act in 1965. We went from 75%, we've dropped over 20% of our population in 20 years, in 15 years. Almost over a percent a year, we're declining. So when you ask, what is the total, what am I looking at on the interstate? I'm looking at the totality of the destruction of America. Look, I'll give you one better. As I traveled to give a speech at Freedom Fest. I was in Las Vegas and St. Louis Airport. Guys, I looked around. I'm telling you, that is not the America that I grew up in 10 years ago. That is not the demographics that I grew up in. There's no way in hell this is but that is the demographics of America that I was sitting in a concourse because I like to people watch and see what's going on. I'm like, holy mother of God. Is it just St. Louis? Well, no, it's Kansas City. It's Las Vegas. And the other place I stopped, I just stood around. I was like, am I even in America? What happened to my country? And that's the big problem that we're dealing with.
Obama and the globalists have effectively destroyed a big portion, right? Like I said, we got home at 0300 this morning, and we stopped at a Buc-ee's in Georgia, maybe 0100-ish, something like that. And you know how busy Buc-ee's are, and they're busy 24/7. I counted on one hand the number of whites that were in Buc-ee's. There were people in there that were anything and everything but white, speaking anything and everything but English. And I include that, what do they call the vernacular of English that the blacks use now? I can't remember. Ebonics, yeah. So it's a foreign language. It's not English. So it was shocking, Randy, and I'm primed to look for this stuff. Khalid, I want to give you a chance to catch up to JJ here because he just took a commanding lead. But I'm going to come back to you quickly on your thoughts on what Randy just said, and then Jeff, coming to you for your thoughts on what JJ just said. Plus, I'll hit you with the next question at that point. Go ahead, Khalid.
Well, JJ's absolutely right. I mean, we've been seeing this for years now. First, the UN decided that the migration, what was it called? Migration replacement was a strategy that was used inside the United States. Mm-hmm. Then America turned around and said, okay, wait a minute. All of those Afghanis and those Iraqis and those Syrians that were part of our armed forces and helped us out as translators and as drivers who are threatened by the Taliban, we need to bring them to America as well, without any vetting, without any kind of checking, without any kind of background. They were all put on airplanes and brought to the U.S. You have diluted the look.
Mm-hmm.
If I come to America today, I honestly can tell you that I will not even recognize the country I grew up in. I spent 27 years inside the United States. If I were to land up in the U.S. tomorrow, I'd be going, holy fuck, what country? Is this Pakistan? Is this India? Is this Saudi Arabia? Because the plethora of people are all dark and foreign language speaking. And you have got to wonder what country you're in. And then when you move out into the communities, when you move out into the cities, when you go out looking for work, again, America first, and you're giving H-1Bs to Indians so they can fire Americans and bring Indians across the border, give them American jobs. And Donald Trump says, what? Well, we don't have the skills to build airplanes. We don't have the skills to write software programs. Have you looked around at how many freelance entrepreneurs are sitting writing software, building, learning, understanding how to do these things? But you're going, no. India is my friend, so I am going to give them a free reign, open blanket, and H-1Bs coming in. Why are you replacing the American workforce? Why are you replacing the American with a foreigner that tomorrow will overthrow your culture completely?
Amen.
Everyone talks Muslims. You have the Indians who have in what areas they've set up in. They built huge temples, and I mean huge fucking temples. They are embedding their culture into the American culture. You cannot find anyone who is not going, wait a minute, we want a piece of America. We want a piece of the American pie, but we don't want to be American pie anymore. We want it to be a mishmash pie where we have this much, they have this much, they have this much, and we'll give this little sliver to the white American. Unless the white American stands up and says, wait a minute, this is our country, we've had enough, and changes the demographic and changes the immigration policy of the U.S., I don't think it's going to be 2030, JJ. I think by 2028, Americans are gone.
No,
I agree.
Within 3 years, we're going to see kinetic conflict break out in America because of this. You can bank on that. Within 3 years, it's going to happen. So also, just quickly before I go to Jeff, I want to say this whole diversity is our strength bullshit. Nothing could be further from the truth. And there's mountains of scientific evidence that show that we don't necessarily attract what we want. We attract what we are. Think of traditional America. You had Little Italy in most big cities, especially somewhere like New York. You had Chinatown. People who have the same culture, same values, same morals, same beliefs congregate together. When you introduce diversity, you mess the whole thing up. You mess all the balance up. We used to be a melting pot, not a cultural mosaic like they're trying to ram down our friggin' throats now.
But where did this melting pot, what were the ingredients of our melting pot? This is the propaganda lie. All the ingredients to the melting pot were white Christian Europeans.
Yes.
That's what the melting pot was. It wasn't a hodgepodge from the Middle East, Central America, and Africa. That's a lie. That did not happen until 1965. Everything that we're living through today happened in 1965.
Thanks to LBJ.
Yeah, LBJ was a piece of trash. My father said when he was a Secret Service agent, his job was to ride around in another car and like play bumper cars with LBJ at Camp David because he was so drunk all the time. And they were afraid he's going to crash his Cadillac into trees. That we have chosen, people have chosen the dumbest people in our society to rule over us so they can control us. I absolutely believe that 100%. As I go, as I have to leave, I had to leave on a high note so Darth Vader there couldn't take my title.
So it's a tie. I'm going to call it a tie.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
You're going to have to live with the tie.
I'm going to take my purple and pink lights down next time. It's going to be all black.
No, you need red. Blood
red. Just red. Red like Bill,
Trump, or like a Biden did in Philly.
Biden did, right? The Satan background, and all he had to do was put a little mustache on. That's all that was missing. Oh my God, guys!
I got to tell you, from a white heterosexual man's perspective, Botox plus makeup plus red zone, it doesn't work for me.
No, it works for me. Whatever keeps me young, I'll do whatever I need to do. All right, guys, take care.
Thanks, JJ. Everybody else, stick around.
Have a good one.
All right.
Yeah. So, Jeff, you've had the opportunity to absorb all of the rays of sunshine from JJ and Khalid. Get on your soapbox and tell me what your thoughts are.
Okay, I saw something today where someone was saying, oh, we don't have enough workers, it's going to hurt our economy. And sorry, bullshit. Okay, on the one hand, people are saying we don't have enough workers, so therefore we have to import these people. But on the other hand, everybody's losing their job to AI and robotics. Which is it? It can't be both. I think we need to get rid of the H-1B visa program for the most part. If there is a really unique skill set that we cannot find here at all, maybe. But this idea of importing people from India so they can get trained up on a job and they can fire Americans because they have to pay Americans more is bullshit. And those companies should be fined. And I like the idea. So yeah, you want an H-1B visa, it's going to cost you $100,000 per visa. Well, these are coders. They're not going to pay an extra $100,000 for a coder because they lose right there the cost benefit of hiring some guy from India and paying him peanuts. And Americans will do those jobs. Americans did those jobs for 250 years. We put a man on the moon with American people. We invented computers with American people. Everything we did was with Americans. And the whole melting pot, I think JJ's right when you look at what are the ingredients of the melting pot. I lived in Pittsburgh for a while, and Pittsburgh drew a lot of immigrants back in the day. There were Czech neighborhoods, there were German neighborhoods, there were Polish neighborhoods, there were Italian neighborhoods. And that's where they congregated. People spoke the same language. They were all recent immigrants. But you know what? In those neighborhoods now, there's a Little Italy in Bloomfield, it's called, in Pittsburgh. But it's not all Italians anymore. And they're not running around speaking Italian and only doing Italian stuff. They've kind of kept their culture, and there's the main drag there. They still have you still get a good Italian sausage, blah, blah, blah. But they're Americans. And, they don't only marry the Italians. They don't, and the Czechs don't only marry the Czechs. They've all interbred. They all speak English now. Yeah, a few of them may speak the old language, but it's not a daily thing. But they have blended, they have melted. You've taken all these different metals, melted them down and together and made an alloy. And that alloy is American. Now what we're doing, though, is you've got this alloy that is American. We're bringing in people. We're bringing in stuff. We're not throwing in metal. We're throwing in rocks. And the rocks don't melt, and the rocks don't join the alloy. And so you've adulterated it, essentially. Now, if someone wants to come in from India and fully assimilate into this country, power to them. But most of them don't. Middle Eastern ones, I hate to say it, the Muslims in particular, really don't. Because it's part of their religion is, if you give up your faith and become a Christian, even though Islam and Christianity and Judaism are all based on the same stuff, they're all three, children of the book. But, they think they're going to go to hell, and it's okay to kill someone who's given up their faith. Now, we don't kill Christians who become Jews. We don't kill Jews who become Christians. Or even Christians who become Muslims. There's nothing in the Christian faith that says, you have to execute that person. But there is something in Islam that says if you're a Muslim and you join one of the other two faiths, you do get killed. So that keeps them from joining the alloy. That keeps them from, becoming Americans per se. And I think what we need to do is, we need to force more self-deportations by eliminating any kind of benefit whatsoever, education, healthcare, money, housing, everything from illegal immigrants, period. End of discussion. And so you've got one choice. You can stand here and starve, or you can go home, and they'll go home. And it'll probably be better for their home countries anyway, because they may have picked up skills and stuff here they can take back to Guatemala or Honduras, or wherever the hell they're from, and improve their country and make it more of a first world country instead of a third world hellhole. That's a good thing. And Americans, another thing we've always pushed this, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. So we have all these people who borrow $100,000 to go to college to get a degree in gender women's studies or upside down sociology or underwater basket weaving. And all they have is debt and no skills. And we got to stop that. Let people become tradesmen, make good livings, start their own business, and then maybe even establish some sort of generational wealth because they create a plumbing and HVAC company, something like that, and then they can pass it on to their kids. But this idea that one size fits all and it's called college is nonsense. And we got to get back to our manufacturing blue collar roots, where blue collar was not an ugly word. Now someone says I'm blue collar, they look, oh, my son's a plumber. Oh God, he failed. Well, no, he's worth about $1.8 million and has his own shop and has 12 employees. But they still, but he didn't go to college. You know who else didn't go to college? Bill Gates didn't go to college. Well, he didn't graduate. Lots of people didn't graduate from college. Henry Ford never went to college.
Unless somebody's going through to be a professional, like a doctor or surgeon or something, it's actually handicapped. If I see that you have a degree in 278 gender study bullshit or DEI or anything like that, which is the majority of undergrad degrees these days, not only is your education worth nothing, it's turn you into a dumb motherfucker at the end of the day.
Those people have an arrogance about them because I went to college. Okay, I have a doctorate. Yeah, I have a doctorate in what? Lesbian history? Who cares? You have an entitlement. You have no real skills, and you have unrealistic expectations of what you are supposed to do for me as your boss.
There's a guy on X who walks around campuses and hands people a piece of paper and says, could you please read this for the camera? And you're talking, kids who've got multiple degrees and they can't read the simplest of sentence. They're illiterate. They've been pushed through from this DEI bullshit. I saw one, I'm trying to remember what the word was, that she just couldn't get it right. It was a common word, but it had more than 3 syllables. And this was somebody studying to be an MD. I wouldn't have let that person touch me with anything, period. But Jeff, I'm going to say, while Randy and Clede tied for Ray of Sunshine tonight, you were barely behind them. Good job. Let's get back into the cartel side of this, though, Clede. So let's say you're a sheriff. You're a couple states north of the border, and a cartel sets up distribution in your county. What do you have to actually fight against them?
Well, the first thing you need, the first thing you need to understand is what level of surveillance can you maintain? Because you can't jump at the small drug house or the small storage facility. You need to figure out the entire network that runs through your county. So the first thing is understanding how the system runs. Once you understand how the system runs, then you need to start breaking that system down piece by piece, breaking down the rat lines, breaking down the people that are carrying the material, the drugs from point A to point B, so that it no longer becomes valuable to operate within that within that county. The problem you've got right now is that law enforcement in the U.S. is not enabled to do that. And that's partially because the FBI is not interested. That's partially because law enforcement's not been trained up for it. Partially because of what BLM did to defund the police. You lost highly qualified, well-respected, well-trained police officers because of what BLM did with defund the police. Now the standards that you're hiring police officers on, DEI is a polite way to put what kind of police officers are being hired. Well, I can hold a gun, but I can't hit a target. Well, I can hold a stun gun, but I can't hold a real gun. Well, if I hit somebody, I'm going to get charged with police violence. You've created a fear amongst your law enforcement that even by protecting your own people, you're scared that the blowback's going to come back on you. And when you have that fear in law enforcement, you cannot protect your community. You cannot protect the city. You cannot protect the county. You cannot protect the state, because everyone's scared. If I do this, this will happen to me. And that's not going to work. So as a county sheriff, understanding how the system operates, breaking down that system, you will put your head on a chopping block, because either the cartel will come to you with a bag full of money and say, take this money, keep your mouth shut and stay out of our way, or they will come kidnap your family, execute them, and then they'll keep you in line like that. There are no two ways about it anymore.
Yeah, you said another mouthful there. Jeff, I want to hear your thoughts on what Clede just said, and then I'm going to hit you both with a question to wrap up this segment.
Well, he's absolutely right. Before you're going to take down any kind of organization like that, you got to collect intelligence, and you got to have the resources and the skill set to be able to do that. It's not just cops on the streets. You got to have people who know how to develop, recruit, and run essentially spies, penetrations of the cartels or the neighborhoods or cartel adjacent, where they can get information. And you don't do it necessarily by arresting all the little street dealers. Think of it in a military sense. That's an army, and they've taken a position. You can go in there and try and fight every soldier hand to hand, or you can cut off their supplies and then starve them out, and then wait long enough and the lot will desert, and they'll just blend in. They'll go back into the jungle and be gone. That is the one that will. So if you can get into their, information on their distribution network, disrupt their incoming supply. So the street dealers have nothing to sell. If they have nothing to sell, they don't make money. If they're not making money, they're not going to sit on the street corner for nothing. So yeah, so Khalid is right in that sense. Yeah, my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. So the question for both of you, I want you to rank the 3 tests, right? So we've got the highway test, the arrest test, the fentanyl test. Which ones carry or what order they carry the most weight in as far as revealing that cartels or a cartel is operating in your county? And then based on that, what's the one thing that they should absolutely be tracking, all Americans, as far as the threat's concerned? Khalid, you first, then Jeff.
Okay, let's start off with the highway test, because when you can understand the distribution networks, you understand where you need to get to, where you need to put your resources. It's nice to say that we should be looking at arrests first, but arrests are the secondary part of what you need to achieve. The fentanyl is coming into across the border. It's coming across the border, whether we like it or not. It's coming across the border. So I'm going to discount that completely, because that is the motivating factor that sits up on top. When you come down, when you drill down from there, your interstates, how's the drug moving from point A to point B? What routes are they taking? Who's moving it? How's it being moved? Where is it being stored? Once it's being stored, where does it go from there? That's where you put in the arrest model. When you start looking at that, when you start working from that point of view, you actually run, and being an intelligence agency, you actually build an intelligence operation that's solely and wholly focused on dismantling the cartel's operations. So for me, fentanyl is up on top. That's there no matter what. Interstates, then the arrests. That's where I would put it.
Yeah, I haven't even processed what order I'd put them in yet, but I'll cheat and I'll say after I hear Jeff too. I'll take your input and Jeff's.
I agree with Khalid, but for slightly different reasons. The reason I would look at the highway test is all because they're not selling drugs in your community doesn't mean they're not using your communities to sell drugs. You look at West Texas, there are counties out there that the average age is 55, and there's, it's a whole county and there might be less than 1,000 people in it, and they're not buying drugs because, they're old ranchers. But if I'm the cartel, it's a great place to set up because no one's looking. There's not enough people around. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. So, but they're going to be moving those drugs in and out of that county because maybe they're using that county as a distribution point or as a waypoint or as a essentially a stash house location. And because they're not selling drugs in there, you're not going to have overdose. You're not going to see arrests. You're not going to see that because those counties probably have like 5 sheriffs for the entire freaking county. And they're not thinking cartels. They're thinking stolen cattle and, a stolen car and maybe a missing elderly dementia patient or something along those lines. And as far as fentanyl goes, fentanyl is the drug du jour. And that will change. We had cocaine, we had crack, we had crystal meth, we had Oxycontin. Today it's fentanyl. I can guarantee you if tomorrow it might be something else because people who want to get high are always going to want to get high. And whatever the drug du jour is, they're going to want to get high on it. And it might be fentanyl, it might not. During Prohibition it was alcohol. For the longest time it was weed. And then until they were chasing a bigger buzz. So fentanyl in and of itself, it is. We're looking at bootleggers. Fentanyl is the white lightning in the trunk of the car. And if you don't have that, you'll have something else. So I think the biggest thing is highway, just because it doesn't limit you to just local consumption, and it's always got to go somewhere.
So for those of you who might be a little younger than, say, Gen X, white lightning was in reference to alcohol during the Great Depression.
Illegal alcohol, moonshine. Yeah, illegal
moonshine, exactly. I would disagree, though, on the fentanyl comments as far as being the drug du jour, because fentanyl is every other drug is being laced with fentanyl, not because they want people to buy fentanyl, but because it's so highly addictive and the high is so much more intense than many other drugs. It's much more pervasive than saying, okay, cocaine in the 70s and 80s. You know, it's not like they were using cocaine to spike pot and hash and meth and all these other things, right? Fentanyl is far more pervasive. So where I would disagree, but again, all of them are important things. I would actually look at fentanyl deaths. Fentanyl deaths go up. There's more fentanyl in our area, which means there's probably a pretty heavy cartel, presence. And if it's not the cartels, then it's their gangs like TDA and other opportunistic gangs, I would argue. So, there's a ton of different ways of looking at this. Nobody's 100% right. Nobody's 100% wrong. I personally think actually all three of them are something you want to track, because we're getting back to pattern recognition. Khalid, but Jeff and I and Randy have spoke at length on pattern recognition over the course of the past month. You see this one thing, okay, well, we should be paying attention. You see the second thing, it's like, wait a minute, there's something more going on here. You see the third thing, and it's like, holy crap, we are in SHTF at that point in time, right? And where that came from is, how many times has somebody asked you, Khalid, you've said, well, you have to have your head on a swivel. And you've replied, when they ask what that means, you say, well, you have to have a high level of situational awareness. And that's a somewhat nebulous concept for some people. And they say, well, what does that mean? And you turn around and maybe you explain it. Colonel Jeff Cooper's combat mindset, condition white, yellow, orange, red, etc. But when I was stewing about this over a month ago, like, what's the best way to communicate this to our audience and other people, is situational awareness in my mind is pattern recognition. Recognizing the patterns, recognizing with each additional pattern of behavior that gets stacked on top, that you're getting higher in Colonel Jeff Cooper's combat mindset, more one step closer to SHTF, essentially.
Well,
so
go ahead, Jeff. One quick comment on the arrest thing. The problem with arrests is you're relying on a jurisdiction to report them and report them accurately. Okay, a death is a death. There's an obituary, there's a dead body, there's a death certificate. Fentanyl bust on a highway, yeah, cops like to publicize that because of, hey, we're doing our job, we did all this big bust. But how many people are arrested for, on street level, and then they plead down to something else, or they flip, and a lot of it don't get reported, and not reported accuracy, or cities purposely, we've seen this a lot lately, underreport crime stats because they don't want to look like they're failing. So arrests of all those, the rest is the one I'd put the least amount of faith in.
Good point on the highway stuff, right? So a friend of mine, Lane Kelly, was a paramedic for years in Cleveland, Tennessee. And when they consolidate all the county services, so the sheriff, the fire, and EMTs, he was a paramedic, Bradley County, Tennessee. He was standing outside having a cigarette, and he was talking to this sheriff's deputy, and they had just, made this huge bust on I-75 a couple days before that. I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was a huge amount of money and a huge amount of drugs. And he said to the cop, he's like, so how on earth did you find this one car out of the sea of cars on I-75? And the cop said, well, two different ways. One, we get a call from the feds that say, this guy's coming through your area during this window of time, driving this particular vehicle. They'll have a lot of cash and drugs on hand. We want you to pull them over. We want you to seize everything, which you can keep. You can keep the money, you can keep the car, but we need you to hand him over to us at that point so that we can interrogate him and find out who the next level up is during the scheme. And the sheriff's deputy said to Lane, that's by far the number one way that they catch these guys in the interstate. But then he said, the other way we catch people is we look for middle-aged white guys driving very expensive European sports cars. And so I just so happened at the time I had a GT Edition M3, essentially a race car, 600 horsepower race car that only weighed 2,100 pounds because it was mostly carbon fiber. And it was a 200 plus mile an hour car. And I took it over 200 miles an hour on the Daytona Speedway after I signed a waiver, giving my life away, of course. And so Lane is telling me the story, and he looks at me, he goes, you're screwed, man, because I was heading south back to Florida. And he said, they're going to pull you over for sure. So of course I've got radar detectors running. I got a heavy foot, and I crossed the state line from Georgia into Florida, and he lived, of course, just in Tennessee, right above Chattanooga. And I said to him, well, I called him up. I said, well, you're wrong. I said, I made it all the way back home to Florida here and didn't get pulled over, kind of like a neener type of moment. So I get to the intersection of I-10. I jump on I-10, and I'm about maybe 10 minutes east of there. And I look over at this exit, and it was, if I had been in my truck, that's where I would have stopped, because it was when they were doing that transition to diesel, that had whatever parts per million, the clean diesel thing. For a couple of years there, it was really hard to find the new mix of diesel for the new engines, because a lot of places still had the old, I guess, dirtier version of diesel, whatever. So I look over and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the exit I usually stop at. And then I look way back, and there's like this white Jeep Grand Cherokee, no markings or anything on it. I look down at the dashboard. This car was not built here in North Carolina, where they build a lot of BMWs. It was imported from Germany, meaning that the whole thing was in friggin' metric, right? So I look down at the dash, and I'm going 180 kilometers an hour, so I'm doing the rough math in my head going, okay, so maybe like 110, 120 miles an hour, something like that. And I thought, and I see the guy start moving. I thought, well, I'm just going to slow down for a minute here. So I end up behind this semi, and this guy's riding my ass. I'm doing about 75, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I'm just going to let him go around. Sure enough, he had all the hidden lights and blah, 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 blah. And he pulls me over, and he comes up to the window, and he says, son, do you know how fast you were going? I said, I don't have a fucking clue. Look at the dash. This car's from Germany. I can't read it. He's like, yeah, okay, give me your driver's license. He walks away. So he's in his car for like 20 minutes. And it was right around the time we came out with the super speeder stuff here in Florida. They call it super speeder in Georgia. They call it something different here. Basically, if you're something like 30 miles an hour over the speed limit, they can impound your car and stuff, right? So I'm texting my wife saying, holy shit, I think they might take my car away here. Here's Mike Politis' phone number. He's a good friend of ours, very high profile attorney in Central Florida. He comes back to my car. He says, Mr. Heaven, what do you do for work? I said, well, I work in high tech. He says, well, can you prove it? And I said, well, I don't have my tax returns with me. I said, I got some business cards in the door of my car. He said, give me one. And of course, I have my hands at 10 and 3, so he can see my hands. And I said, well, I'm not going to reach down there and grab something out of the door. You go ahead and do it. So he opens the door, takes my card, poof, gone. Another 20 minutes go by, and I'm like texting my wife saying, this isn't going to turn out okay. Eventually he walks back up to the door, and he says, Mr. Heaven, I'm sorry for the delay. He had a Velcro patch on his chest. He pulls it off, and underneath it, DTF, Drug Task Force. And he says, we're running a sting for 10 miles here on I-10. And I radioed ahead so that the rest of the guys don't bother you, that you're clean. I apologize for the, holding you up for so long here on the side of the road. And he said, do me a favor. He said, I looked at my dash. It's got kilometers and miles per hour. He said, if you keep it, like 110, 115 kilometers an hour, you won't have any problems. He said, I want to see you get home safely, blah, 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 sort of thing, right? So I get back on the interstate, and man, I seen stuff in the woods that I would have never noticed otherwise. There were like blacked out vans pulled off the interstate like this. I mean, it was crazy. So once I know I'm clear of all of that, I had to call Lane Kelly, and I had to eat crow. I was like, well, you were wrong. They didn't get me on I-75, but they got me on I-10. Sorry, because the cop actually said, you're the profile of a drug runner, white, middle-aged, driving a very expensive European sports car. So anyways, if you're a white guy, middle-aged, driving an expensive sports car, especially European, be careful when you're going, on drug routes. I-75 is the pipeline, right, from South Florida to Detroit and all points in between. But with that being said, I want to just briefly mention that we have a Give, Send, Go underway so that I can hire a full-time assistant. I work seven days a week, 16, 17 plus hours a day. Anybody who knows me can tell you that that's a fact. And in order to take Survival Dispatch News, Survival Dispatch Remnant, Street Survival TV, take all of them to the next level, I have to have an assistant. We've raised $3,215 so far. Any donations that y'all can make. I've never done this before, but I know I've hit a wall basically of what I'm capable of producing on my own. I'm going to put the link down below in the description. Any assistance there would be much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into the third and final segment for tonight, which is titled The Pipeline and the Question. The documented pipeline is real. Shelters, way stations, and aid hubs run the entire length of Mexico now, right? You got the Catholic network alone, I want to say, accounts for something 3-4 dozen facilities serving over 100,000 invaders. They're not migrants, they're invaders. Much of it built with money that flowed through Washington through all the USAID scam baloney. So our audience keeps asking whether that infrastructure is being pre-positioned for a surge after the next election. And when I say our audience, I mean our guardians in our private community, which is on an Element server that I built myself that's super locked down. If you go to survivaldispatch.news, you can sign up for only $7 a month, and then you get invited into that private community. But I fielded a number of questions there. Is this infrastructure on the south side of the border, these camps that we spoke of a couple of times, is that being used to essentially stage the next invasion come January 2029, which, you know, I would bet a lot of money that whoever comes into office January 2029 will open the southern border much like the Biden installation does, because it's all bad kabuki theater and it's just going to be the next bad guy in office. So to tell you the honest truth, I'm going to have Cleet speak about this, but the camps are being built. The camps are actually already starting to house people. By the time January 2029 comes around, there will be a standing army on our southern border of invaders, you know, these so-called migrants waiting to cross the border. And if we don't stop that, when that happens or is about to happen, America is done at that point in time, completely done. Greg Bovino, people tried to misquote him and say that he said that there were 50 million illegals in the country and 50 million people who were here on visas and other such things. That's not what Greg Bovino said. Greg Bovino said there are over 100 million illegal aliens in America right now. Then there was another event that happened, which, you know, I can't remember the exact incident. It wasn't that long ago. It was maybe 6 months ago, where Greg Bovino said, well, now that we know this other thing happened, there's actually, he said, you know, I've extrapolated the numbers. It's 108 million illegals in the country. So no good news there. And I know I'm not in the running for Ray of Sunshine, but just wanted to throw that in there. So what changes for you is the changes you should be watching, I should say. You know, we name the indicators that will confirm or kill the claims that the cartels operate in your county. We track them on a regular basis on the show. And if you take that and you spin it into pattern recognition, then you'll have a pretty good idea where your county stands in relation to cartel, let's say, in the level of cartel operations in your county. So going back on track, going to Encyclopedia MD, Jeff, lay out what's documented on the Mexican side. And if you haven't studied this too much, I know that Cleed has, but shelters, way stations, funding, what's actually going on right across the border, not that far from you.
No, there's a huge infrastructure in place. They have routes, like you said, they have way stations, they have camps, they have places where the immigrants can come up and they can stop and rest and rearm or re-equip and do whatever. And they have transportation set up. You know, they're not walking from Guatemala to the southern border. They're taking trains. Sometimes they're taking freight trains. You know, they're literally putting them in cattle cars. They're on buses. They're on commercial trucks. I mean, they're not walking, and all that infrastructure is there. But in addition to that, there are people along the way to not only push them in the right direction and make sure they've got enough money for food and whatever they need, but they're also coaching them on. They have documentation is, okay, when you're asked about why are you here, don't say this, say that. Don't say you're there for a job or you want the economic opportunity. Say you fear for your life in your home country because fill in the blank. I'm gay, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jehovah's Witness, I'm whatever, pick your poison. And so they come up, and that's why we see, and JJ has commented on this countless times, that they come up and they all say the exact same thing because they've been coached to do it. Now, a lot of that was paid for, or was funded through NGOs and paid for by USAID. Now, when they shut down USAID for all intent and purposes in the year one of the Trump administration, which was a wonderful thing and should have been done decades ago, that infrastructure didn't go away. It just went into mothballs until someone came along to fund it again. And so you're going to get the Soroses of the world. You're going to get the WEF, the World Economic Forum type people. You're going to get United Nations. You're going to get other countries who want to undermine us, say China, say Russia, whoever, and they will provide funding. You've got the Singham character who's an American citizen living in Shanghai, China, pushing all of China's agendas. And so, it's easy for him as a billionaire to funnel money into it. And people go, oh, it's Chinese money. Well, it is, but you won't know it because Singham's got enough money of his own that if he said, yeah, I dumped $10 million in there, well, I've got, several billion, so it's just a drop in the bucket to me. Well, I guarantee you it's Chinese Communist Party money. So, if we get Democrats back in power, they're going to try and bring back USAID in all of its glory, and all those organizations will just go from idle to drive. They're neutral. They'll just put it in drive again, and it will start right back up. They already have the infrastructure. They already have the know-how. They already have the people. It'll pick up again.
I personally think the only thing that will stop this is, I'm not going to name names at this stage of the game, but there are people who are actually organizing, let's call it, private security. Be careful what words I use, stationed along the Mexican border to repel the next round of invasions. If we don't do that, we're in deep doo-doo for sure. So, Clete, instead of going on to the next question, I just want to hear your thoughts on what Jeff had to say and your thoughts in general. And I know that we've got these ISIS camps on the north border, but for the time being, let's try to keep it to the southern border because we're talking cartels and stuff. I want to know what the cartels piece of this is as well, Khalid, as far as the camps. They're already putting people in them. It's been funded by American taxpayers or, crazy billionaires like Jeff just mentioned. Weave all of that together for us. As the reigning Ray of Sunshine champion, nobody's better equipped to do it than you.
Well, let's look at it this way. You've got all of Central America. You've got all of the hated countries that want to do damage to the U.S. They're all funneling money or people into these camps. Now, what's happening at these camps? You have proper papering where you have a police document created that my life is at risk. I cannot stay where I am. That's why I'm immigrating to the U.S. I need political asylum. This didn't exist before. This is something that we've now seen happen. You have language trainers that are helping them reduce their accent so they don't sound like they're from Central America. They actually sound like they're a little bit educated. They can speak English. They can communicate as much as they need to with CBP so they can get across the border, get into the country. And once they get in the country, they've got a handler inside the country. They make a phone call. Yeah, I'm in. What do I do now? Okay, go to the X address. He has a phone for you. He has a social security card for you. He has an address for you. He has a job for you. And disappear. Forget everything that you know. Disappear. The model that's being built is what we, back in the old days, back in the 80s and 90s, when we were looking how terrorism operated, terrorists were using this same model. They were creating fake paper. Fake paper was being used to enter Europe. In Europe, they were changing their documents, living 5-6 years, marrying a European, getting a European passport, moving into the US. That model has now been regenerated by the cartels. And the cartels are doing it with very clear guidance. China's CCP, Iran's IRGC. They are both sitting right there on the other side of the border, inside these camps, going, okay, wait a minute. All right, you can be a spotter, you go over to that camp. You can be a fighter, you go over to that camp. You can be a worker, you go over to that camp. You are a runner, you go over to that camp. Okay, you're a sacrificial lamb, you go to that camp. And they're spreading people out based on the job they will have once the border explodes for these people again. Now, my fear, honestly, this has been happening on the northern border. We've been watching it on the northern border. The hundreds of thousands of ISIS fighters that have entered via the northern border and have paper, have passports, have driver's license, have social security numbers, have places to live. Think about it from this point of view. Why are cartels buying up entire home districts, empty houses, wherever they come up available? A cartel goes and buys it, and it sits empty. You never see anybody coming there. That cartel is purchasing that in what we used to call shelf companies. Shelf company is something that you have bought, you're paying the taxes on, so it looks like someone actually lives there, and then you just move somebody in. That person just takes over the residence, but not the ownership. This is a proper model that's been developed, and that model is being funded by China and by Iran, and the cartels are also funneling money in from all the drug money they're generating, from all the trafficking money they're generating. They are ready to move into every community in the United States, whether it be wealthy or poor. It doesn't matter. They have built their model, and the model is being perfected day by day by day based on little guinea pigs they send across the border. Okay, did that paper work? Okay, did his language work? And based on that, they're modifying what they're doing inside the camps. Now, your fear has to be the ones that are being trained as fighters. Those are getting specialized weapons training, because Mexico is it's an outlaw state. I mean, you can do whatever you want there, gunfire, camps. No one's going to ask any questions. When you have these fighters being trained and then going into the United States, they're going in with a mission to cause mass casualties. And my fear is it's going to be before the elections happen. That's when you're going to see the trickle start. And once the election happens, that's when the flood comes in.
Yeah, so I would expect nothing less from the ray of sunshine. So I've had a couple of people, question the assertions, the assertions, I should say, that these camps are being built and looking for evidence. I can tell you 3 separate federal agencies that I've spoken directly with my contacts have confirmed that this is absolutely going full speed ahead. You'll hear more about it from us and others soon. I was asked to just not name names until we cross a certain point here. With that being said, Jeff, the policy is likely to flip in January 2029. And based on what both you and Cleet have had to say, I think that they can turn this machine back on, this invasion machine, literally in the blink of an eye. So that leads to the question I have for you. And I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. Maybe we'll call it like surge readiness. So what does surge readiness mean for a community that's on the border and, let's say, not on the border, and let's say a long ways away from the border? How do communities prepare for that?
Well, you got to go back and look at
your volume's a little low, Jeff.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You need to go back and look at 2023, 2024, and look at what was actually going on. And that took it took them 3 years to ramp up to that. They want to do that immediately this time, but they have a game plan. They've got a little map. They got a roadmap. So whatever whatever you were needing to do or wanting to do in 2023, when this illegal immigration crush was at its peak, expect that, but it won't take 3 years to get there. It'll probably take 3 months to get there. And what we'll see ahead of time is you'll see these immigrant convoys or caravans, where you want to call them, starting to form. And we've already heard about some of them starting to form recently in Mexico, in southern Mexico, and they want to move their way north, and they're just preparing. And they're probably waiting because, yeah, you have 100,000 people sitting in camp. You know, they got to have food, they got to have water, they got to have sanitation. But if they're dispersed throughout the country, then what you do is you say, okay, here's the go sign. And I say Democrats win the election in 2028. They come into office in January 2029. You're going to see all those people moving to the border in December in anticipation of, them basically kicking the doors open. Now, if a Republican wins in 2028, if it's Rubio or Vance, you'll probably see those surge. They'll probably go back. At least a lot of them will go back home because they don't want to come up to the border, sit in essentially a glorified refugee camp, and go nowhere, depending on who the president is. But if the Democrats elected, you will see them move towards the border in December, early January, to be prepared to be the first ones through the frickin' door. Because they also look at it as resources. If I'm the first one to get a seat at the table and grab a plate of food, hell with the guys behind me. I'm going to get mine.
Yeah, true story. Clete, give me your thoughts on communities being surge ready, ones on the border, and then the other two categories I mentioned.
Well, your ones on the border have to be more, and I've got to be really careful how I say this. You've got to be more militantly aware of what's coming, because you're the first ones that are going to get hit. The border cities, the border villages, the border towns are the first ones that are going to get hit. And you're going to have these people roll through your communities. So your level of preparedness has got to be at the highest possible level. It's not something that you can't understand. It's not something you can't fathom happening. It's already happened once. The Biden installation showed us exactly how it happens. Like Jeff just said, you have now had 2.5, 3 years with all kinds of funding coming from abroad to help you modify and improve that model. The bigger concern is when you start looking at gated communities, developed communities, larger municipalities, where there are blocks and blocks and blocks of empty homes. Those homes have got to be sorted out. You cannot leave them open. I don't own a home in the US and live in Pakistan for 8-9 years. I will come back and forth. How is it there's nobody that lives in any of those homes and nobody's coming in checking in? The only person coming in to check in comes, stop by for an hour, and then disappears, and then doesn't come back again for 5-6 months. That's not a resident. That's a stopover. That's a place being prepared for these influxes that are going to happen.
That's a safe house.
Yeah, well, it's not just a safe house, Jeff. These are residences being prepared. It's like I said earlier. These are those chef companies.
Yeah.
That taxes are being paid, everything's being paid, there's a name on the property, and all you're going to do is when these people come across the border, move them to this community in Boston, move them to this community in New England.
A safe house 90% of the time is empty unless you have a safe house keeper. And a lot of times all the safe house keeper does is come by, check on the place, turn the lights on so the electric bill is at zero, run some water, because people check utilities. They'll be there just enough to do that, and then they disappear again.
So we got a warning from not RSO, but it was sent to me by somebody in South Florida that basically said, that we're going back maybe 2 years now, Jeff, where they said be on the lookout for people coming and going at homes that appear to be empty in your neighborhood. And the warning basically is that it started with TDA. We're using these empty homes as stash houses for weapons, drugs, all the things. and I don't remember the exact time frame that they said, but it was basically during the middle of the night. Be on the lookout. You know, if you have cameras pointing in that direction, go check what happened in the middle of the night, because they like to come and go under the cover of night. So it's an interesting phenomenon for sure. But I think as far as tonight's episode is concerned, this machine that was built by Obama essentially and heavily deployed by the Biden installation, which was Obama's third term, they're patient, they're extremely well funded, and for our audience and all American families, I think the ones who pay attention to what's going on, like we talked about before, Jeff, before thank God Clede managed to come back to us, the family who knows what the baseline is. This is the behavior in your community, in your town, in your county, who's been studying that and prepping up. They're not going to be surprised if, God forbid, we get to this point in 2029 again. But versus the people who haven't, had their eye on this particular ball are going to be pretty much, well, they're going to be in trouble. So what's the metaphorical X we're discussing here? Well, that would be the belief that the border is a Texas problem, Arizona, etc., while the cartels, machine, which includes people, products, violence, I mean, they're traveling across the country. There was a federal report, I want to say 6 months ago or so, that basically said that the cartels were now operating in all 50 states, and they did that as a reaction to the border being tightened up somewhat. So as far as that's the X, as far as getting off of the X, I wrote a few things down quickly. I'm going to go to you first, Clede, and then you, Jeff, to get your thoughts. So number one, I think you have the fentanyl conversation tonight. Like, sit your kids down, middle school and up, and tell them the truth, that one pill could be fake, one pill can kill, and not to take anything from a friend, whether it's, at a party or anywhere else. Number two, build your county baseline starting right away. In other words, bookmark your sheriff's office website, bookmark the state attorney general, local papers, crime feed, skim them periodically, at least once a week, for cartel linked arrests, stash house busts, and overdose reporting. Pretty much every overdose is going to circle back to this fentanyl thing these days. And number three, close the two soft doors. And that means your street. So in other words, know your neighborhood, and then lock down the online profile of your children, because believe it or not, that's become more and more frequent. Y'all may remember that Cindy and I, we got a warning from the SO that there were kidnappings occurring in our county at shopping centers. We go to Sam's and we hear this kid screaming. We're looking all over. We can't spot the kid. And, we had a good look around the parking lot, and we both were thinking to ourselves, holy crap, I wonder if that's one of the kidnappings that they were warning about, because nobody else even paid any attention to it but us, but we couldn't spot who the heck it was. So, Khalid, I want to get your thoughts first. What are the things that people can do to get off of this metaphorical X?
You've got to forget the idea that this is just a border problem. The problem is now an entire U.S. problem. And as long as you don't understand that as being an entire U.S. problem, you're not going to find a solution to it. And people that say, the border problem is New York, is California, Arizona, and Texas, you're living in a dream world. You have to understand that the cartels have now expanded their commercial operations throughout the entire United States. And as long as you start saying, well, it's not my problem, it's not my problem, it's not my problem, you're not going to solve anything. And that's the mentality that you have got to figure out first.
Oh, sorry, Khalid. I thought you had more to say. I was waiting for the follow-up on it. My apologies. I got home at 0300. Took me an hour to unload the truck. I'm in the slow lane today. Jeff?
Yeah, well, Kalisa's right. It's not a border problem. I live near the border. I'm in Arizona. I'm in southern Arizona. But it's, as someone once said, we're all in border states now.
Yeah.
And, you've got to look at your baseline, like you said. You cannot notice something abnormal unless you know what normal looks like. It's like, it's like, wow, she's a really pretty girl. If you look around and all the girls are pretty, she's just a girl. But if you look around, all the girls are meh, and then a 10 walks through, you go, okay, yeah, she's a pretty girl, because you're comparing her to the baseline. So you got to know what the baseline is. You got to know what's normal so you can recognize abnormal. And people think, okay, maybe you don't have kids at home and you're not worried about you or your wife doing drugs, obviously. And maybe like in my neighborhood, everybody's in their 50s or above. So I'm not really worried about all these people doing drugs. Okay, it's not just the users you're worried about, or directly, because users need to come up with money to buy their drugs. And so what they're going to do is they're going to rob people. They're going to break into homes. They're going to steal shit to sell, to buy the drugs. And so if you live in a nice, quiet, well-kept neighborhood, guess where they want to go steal from? You, because you probably have nice things that they can turn around and sell to buy drugs. So yeah, all this, people think it doesn't affect me. And I've got a neighbor who's like this, God bless him, but doesn't impact me. Yeah, it does. Not today, not tomorrow, but yes, it does impact you. So, just take the blinders off, for Christ's sakes, open your eyes. And we all need to be paying attention to what's going on in our communities, in our neighborhoods, on our street. And there are secondaries effects to the drug war, other than just somebody dying of an overdose. So be prepared. It's going to hit you.
Quick question for you, Jeff. When Khalid was speaking, he mentioned funding coming from abroad. I'm wondering if you know who this broad is. Like, do you know what her name is or anything like that?
If she's rich, I'm interested in maybe having a date with her, depending on how much money she has.
Right. So another thing that's related to this, actually, let me ask you both this question quickly. How many of the illegals do you reckon, as a percentage range in America, have some sort of tie to the cartels, but they function day in, day out, let's say, as working on a construction crew or something along those lines? Khalid, you first. Is there an army of people in this country? I've heard this, put out there as a theory, and I haven't researched. Is there an army of people here doing these, jobs that when the time that the cartels call upon them, all of a sudden they drop their shovel and pick up a rifle?
Yep. And when you look at the cartels, you got to think sleeper cell. Because when you look at it from that point of view, look, I have put people into construction jobs. I have put people into restaurants. I have put people into transport, driving taxis, driving buses, driving all of this. There's two advantages to this model. Number one, it's drug distribution. They get product and they can sell it right there where they are to the people that work with them and move it out without anyone ever knowing about it. That's advantage number one. Number two, they have the perfect cover. So when the cartel says, okay, pick up a weapon and go, they're ready to go then. And the cartels, again, this is why I tie everything back to, they've been trained in Ukraine. They've been trained by the IRGC. They've been trained by the PLA. They have been given that military mindset of how to operate under the radar. So no one pays attention to what you're doing right now. They don't think about what you could potentially do. If you remember back when we were talking about the CDL licenses and how the no-name given licenses were given to so many people, I was the one screaming, going, these are terrorists on the road with 18-wheelers that can be loaded with explosives and take entire blocks out. How can you not think that's the case?
So, Khalid, I know you haven't been in the country in a couple of years, but every time Sydney and I are traveling, especially to our cabin and back, we now look at every single semi driver that we can see. Many times you can't see them because of the window tinting, or they're sitting behind the door pillar. It's a shocking number of foreigners who've probably, they got their CDL license out of a Cracker Jack box, metaphorically speaking. It's pretty brutal. Jeff, before you answer the question about, these people functioning in regular jobs, I want to preface it by saying this, that we're doing some pretty serious renovations to our cabin that require some manpower. And we had several contractors with us at different times on Saturday to bid on some of the heavy lifting, and figuratively speaking. And the one guy showed up with 3 Mexicans, one who was completely full of shit and thought that we were idiots, and tried to tell us that one of our basement walls had no footer under it, when I absolutely know it does. And how do I know it? Well, because we've had it X-filled and, more fill put in, gravel. And then the other 2 didn't speak at all. But as soon as I walked into the basement with a pistol on my hip, 2 of them were gone, like poof, gone, just like that. We get the bid from the contractors, a white guy in Georgia. And Cindy said, how do you want to respond to this? I said, you should tell the guy that we'll be considering everybody's bids over the next few days. And one thing that we will require from whoever we hire is e-verify results on everybody who steps foot on our property. And of course, the guy came back with a song and dance, how that would be an invasion of privacy and blah, 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 blah. If you find scumbags in your county doing what I just described, call them out on it. This is straight up selfishness on the part of that contract, and I don't give a shit what his price was. I don't care what his quality of work looks like. He will never get 1 red cent from my wife and me, period, full stop. And that's why I asked you the question, Khalid, and that's why I'm asking for your input, Jeff.
Well, going back to the original question about all these illegals, do they, are they beholden to the cartels, and to a certain degree, yes, not all of them. I mean, they do, in that they paid to come here, and a lot of them still have a debt they have to pay off. Now, they may pay it off in cash, or they may pay it off in distributing drugs, because they say, okay, we'll get you to the United States, you owe us $25,000. Well, okay, a guy working for a landscaping company under the table it's going to take a long time for him to come up with an extra 25 grand. But they may trade, hauling or distributing drugs for that. Now, these people, and I've seen them around, and they're obvious who they are, and we've had them for years. I'm talking about growing up in the Southwest. There were always Mexican laborers over here. Most of them, they aren't hardcore cartel members. They're not terrorists. They're just trying to do what they can do to survive and not get killed in the process. So are they going to sell the drugs? Yeah, they'll probably sell the drugs. Are they going to, are they going to send money back to the cartels? Yeah, they got a debt. And if they don't, they'll come after them. Are they going to blow themselves up? Most of them, no. It kind of defeats the purpose. Yeah, I'm going to kill myself to keep you from killing me. But they are out there. They are a fellow traveler. They are a resource to be drawn on. They may not be soldiers, and they're not going to be suicide bombers, but they're there for them to draw on. And we always talk about the dog to tail on military stuff. That for every 10 guys on the line, there's 100 in the rear. Well, if these guys can be your support guys, the guy in the rear areas, that frees up everybody else to be the 10 guys on the line. So what it does is it gives them more flexibility with who they have, because these people that can be forced to handle logistics and communications and things like that.
Essentially foot soldiers. Great explanation on both your parts. Just quickly, survivaldispatch.news. That's where everything related to this podcast goes, survivaldispatch.news. So there's a companion article goes with every episode. And of course, we broadcast now Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Got to give a shout out to our premier sponsor, Carnival, 25-year shelf life, premium American beef, chicken, and pork. There's nothing that compares to it. And if you go to their shopping page and you scroll down right there, you'll see these 3 subscriptions. They start at $99. If you had done this in January, you would be paying approximately $36 for a bag of freeze-dried beef, family bag. And now it's like $48, and it's going to continue to go up. So when you sign up for a subscription, it locks your price in for 12 months. You can't beat it. If you don't want to sign up for a subscription, use the code EATMEAT, all one word, get 10% off. If you haven't checked out my new podcast yet, streetsurvival.tv, This is where we take body cam footage, and people like Jeff and I, or Clede and I, or multiple other people, Mike Glover, JJ Morris, JP, Philip DePino, list goes on and on. We watch body cam footage, only the body cam footage, by the way, where there are survival lessons that we can point out. So we're coming at it from a little bit different angle, but it's streetsurvival.tv gets you to this Substack right here. We did a few pilot episodes. The first official release was the one on, you see on screen right now, the petty neighbor dispute. And can't forget our good friends over at Wasatch Wagyu, best jerky in the world. Everybody here except for Khalid has got an extreme addiction to this crack cocaine, for crying out loud. It's ridiculous how much we are all addicted to it. This is the best jerky in the world, bar none. Look, Greg's got one package on sale right now. So when you go to the jerky page, there it is. You can stack discounts. You can use my discount code SD20 to get an additional 20% off something that's already been discounted. And then the trifecta, the third piece of the puzzle, is Remnants. This is my post-apocalyptic fictional storyline on the Smith family, and it's an unwoke version of The Walking Dead with a big difference. We use the situations and scenarios in this to teach real-world survival skills in a highly entertaining format. It's released every Saturday and Sunday at 12 noon Eastern, for subscribers. It's released a week later at 7 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, Sunday for the public. If you went to each of these three Substacks, survivaldispatch.news, streetsurvival.tv, survivaldispatchremnant.com, and signed up, it would be $7 a month for each, or $70 a year for each. But we now have an all-in-one membership. When you sign up for that, you get one of them for free. So you basically pay $140 a year, and you get everything that we have under those three umbrellas. And it boils down to communicating survival lessons across the board in three different formats. And all of it is pretty entertaining, if you ask me. But of course, I'm kind of biased in that regard. So that's it for tonight's episode. We will be back Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern for the next episode in our America Under Siege series. Of course, tomorrow we've got Remnant. Sunday, we've got Remnant. Sunday, we've got Street Survival TV. So we're not producing any less content. We've just changed the days so that we reach the maximum amount of people. Khalid, can't tell you how good it is to see you back and functioning properly, unlike some of the instances post torture the past few months. Jeff, appreciate your insight as always. Don't know what we'd do without the human encyclopedia known as Encyclopedia MD. But that's it for tonight's episode. This is Chris Evans signing off. God bless our law enforcement officers. God bless our troops. God bless America. And enjoy the closing video. Even though I got home at 0300, I remembered to do it. It's a brand new one. Godspeed, y'all.
They think time makes a man soft. They don't know what it carved into me. I ain't too old to whoop that ass. Still got fire from my past. Talk that talk, but don't you test. You might not walk away from that. I ain't too old, don't push your luck. Still don't give a single fuck. Outlaw blood still runs amok. Cross that line, you getting struck. The road left marks, knuckles still heavy, still swinging the dark. I done seen boys bark, then fold real fast. I was throwing hands while they learned to act. Ain't polished, ain't clean, ain't here for sure. I'm the type to stay quiet till it's time to go. Boots still planted, don't shift, don't sway. I don't talk too much, I just make my way. Got lessons and scars I don't even explain. Got ghosts in my past I don't even name. But I stand right here, still solid, still tough. You can test that line if you feel that rough. I ain't too old to whoop that ass. Still got hands, still built to clash. You run your mouth, I run it back. Leave you laid out in the past. I ain't too old, don't push your luck. Still don't give a single fuck. Outlaw heart still wound up, play with fire. You getting struck? That's the law I live. Ain't no hesitation in the love I give. But cross that line, it flips real quick. From calm old man to a loaded fist. I ain't some story you can laugh about. I'm the reason some boys don't run their mouth. I done buried pride in a dirt road fight and stood right back up in the same damn night. Call me cowboy, outlaw bred. Still got grit where others shed. Still got aim, still got drive. Don't give a single fuck. Outlaw soul still fired up. You don't want that pressure, trust. Woo! Think I'm done, think I fell off. But I built my name whether we get lost. I don't flex, don't fake, don't play pretend. I just hold my ground to the bitter end. I ain't chasing clout, I ain't chasing fame. I just stand on truth and I stand on name. And if you got a problem, say it to me. Don't be whispering loud when you ain't in reach. I still ride for mine, still draw that line. Still got rage tucked deep inside. Still got strength you can't outlast. And I ain't too old to handle that. I ain't too old to whoop that ass. Still got thunder in my grasp. You want trouble, make it fast. I don't wait, I'll make it last. I ain't too old, don't push your luck. Still don't give a single fuck. Outlaw blood still runs amok. Step too close, you out of luck.